Kendo Podcast episode 134. In this episode, I want to talk about bow or not bow due to your religious belief. Kendo Podcast by Hiro Mafuji from KendoGuide.com. Thank you for listening. This podcast is about Japanese martial arts Kendo for Kendo lovers and supported by Kendo enthusiasts through Patreon.com. Thank you for your support, guys. Please visit KendoGuide.com for more Kendo information and how to support KendoGuide.com. Okay, I talked about this question actually on Facebook Live video, and I just wanted to go on live just as a test. I just wanted to try because it's always there, so I didn't know how it works. So I just wanted to try it out. And I didn't think anyone would be watching the live video. But there are a lot of people, actually a few people watching, and gave me some opinions about this topic. Thank you for that. And after that, this video is getting more and more comments. So I just wanted to talk about this on, what's this? It's not Facebook. What is a podcast? So, okay, again, this is live for the members at patreon.com/Kendo for Life. And so if you are watching, you're more than welcome to leave some comments, but I don't know if I can see the comments here or not. But anyway, so the question, I received this type of questions, and maybe once a year, or like, in the past as well. And recently I received this question because I assume that was he practiced, I think Muslim. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. So he is not allowed to bow to any other person or maybe objects as well. Object as in so in Japan we have shrine, right? So we bow to the shrine, or when we go to temple, we bow. So Japanese culture wise, we bow to in a lot of occasions. And then of course in Kendo we bow to each other and bow to shomen, bow to each other, bow to senpai, sensei, of course kohai as well. So we basically bow to show our respect, but he's not allowed to do that because of their religious practice, right? What can they do, right? And then I asked that same question, and I received a lot of comments, and I really appreciate those comments, and I talked to my wife as well. So, this is particularly bow to each other, people, right? Bow to each other. Of course, I believe that traditionally in Japan, traditional dojo, okay? The term dojo is from Buddhism. And the traditional place in Japan, a dojo, they have shrine. They have martial gods, right, from particular shrines. So, to protect the place, and we know they're there to watch over us, keeping an eye on us, so we cannot cheat, or we just train fairly, fair and square, no cheating. So basically that's a sacred place to train us. So that's the idea of the dojo. Now, a lot of people, because of those religious reasons, as well as we don't have traditional dojos as many as we used to have. So we don't have shrine at the dojo. So for example, if you train at a gym, there's no shrine, right? So we bow to the place where we just, it's like to bow and we pay respect to the dojo, right? And also we change our mindset. Okay, I am going to train now at the moment. Now from now on, we just change everything. So you don't carry anything, whatever happened outside, right? So you may be depressed because something happened at your work. You don't want to bring it to the dojo. You don't want to bring anything like bad attitude or anything. You came to the dojo, you open the door, you bow, right? That moment you're there to train. You're not there to complain. You're not there to, you just forget about what happened outside the dojo. So that's kind of switch on training mindset. Okay. So that's kind of part of, I think, to me, it's a part of the reason. It's like kind of my own ritual, bow, change, right? Also, again, as Japanese culture, we bow to the place where we train. So showing respect. Without the place, we can't practice, right? So for that matter, right, we in Japan, we take off our shoes before we get into the building. Of course, there are exceptions as well, but that is a common idea. So to me, even if I walk into a gym, it's a gym, but when I train there, I take off my shoes. I take my shoes off, so kind of, this is no longer gym to me. This is the place I train kendo. So I take my shoes off. Now, I don't really force other people to do it, but that's my mindset. Change my mindset because that's the place that I train kendo. Now, so bowing is to show respect to the place, and then used to be, we used to have martial gods there, but okay, like I said, there's a gym, there's a religious reason. We don't have shrine. Many places don't have shrine. So bowing to the place is just showing to your respect. We're not bowing to any god. We're not practicing religion there. Okay, so that's the first thing we have to realize. That maybe, if you have shrine there, that's fine. I'm not saying that's wrong. Some people don't want to, some people see it as a religious practice. So if you don't feel comfortable about it, of course, it's a shrine, Japanese Shintoism. So if you don't feel comfortable, I don't think you don't have to bow, okay? Because there's a religious freedom, right? Rights to practice any religion. So that's that. Now, bow to each other. That's a kind of different story, I think. If you want to show your respect to your, the person you are going to train with, I don't know any other ways to show your, respect. But I just want to make sure that it is a part of kendo. So if you remove that, I don't think you can't. You probably wants to enjoy this discipline. through Kendo, through the using the the a sword, okay, and let's say we bow to. I mean, when you do kata, we bow to each other, right? And if you don't bow, I mean, we say we begin with bow, end with bow. Of course, bow it means it's respect, but to show respect, we bow. So we remove that. What else can we do? So it's kind of it changing entire concepts. Again, I know it's not only bow is not the only way to show respect. I know that. But it's a cultural thing. So if we remove that, okay, it's a big part of Japanese culture. So this is kind of interesting argument. So how much can you remove Japanese culture? I mean, Kendo is changing, and what can we change? What can we modify? And Kendo is becoming international. We can't really avoid that. We don't want to avoid that, right? That's why Kendo people went outside Japan and they start teaching, right? So international, once they establish an international Kendo federation, that means we want it to be international. So we cannot avoid this. Now, and I have another question. So bowing to people, it's not like you're worshiping that guy. You're just showing respect. Thank you for training with me, and or thank you for fighting me in Shiai. Okay, so just respect, and appreciation. So, the reverse question: if I go to some other countries, right, some other country, and you have to follow certain rules, if I don't want to follow, is that okay or not? For example, I don't know. I don't really know other examples. So, there are a lot of different culture, right? And some, I can't think of any good example. But if you just go, so if I bow to, if I make other people uncomfortable, that's their area, their turf, their home. If I don't follow their rules, probably they won't be happy, and they probably think, "What, you're here? You got to follow our rules." And I think it's very, very fair, because I didn't have to go there, but I decided to go there, and then I refused to follow their rules. I think it's a big question. And then if they think, "Oh, it's okay, that's our rules, you don't have to follow," okay, that's cool. But certain things, I am sure we have to follow. Like, I feel very uncomfortable eating beef in front of someone who doesn't eat beef because of their religious belief. And then if I go to, I think it's India, you don't eat beef, right? Some people, of course, if they believe the religion, it's not allowing to eat beef. If I go there, probably I wouldn't eat beef, because it's very offensive to a lot of people, right? Of course, I don't practice that religion, but at the same time, I don't feel right violating their rules, especially, let's say, especially if I was invited to the someone's home and they don't eat beef, but I start eating beef, kind of thing. I mean, it's not really a good example, but I can't think of any other example. So I think if someone came to my place, right, and let's say I have a place in Japan, let's say my parents' place, and if someone who is not Japanese came to my parents, and we take our shoes off, right, before we get into the house. If they don't take their shoes off, that's a problem. Do I let them to come in? Maybe not. Right? If I live in US and basically I don't wear my shoes on. I don't wear my shoes in my house. And I ask our guests to take shoes off. But if they don't feel comfortable with that, I let them have their shoes on, because this is only because we are in the States. Now, if we are in Japan, this totally no, right? No one have keep their shoes on in the house, and then we don't like it. We're not allowed to do that. There's no exception. Maybe there is exception somewhere, some buildings, but usually they don't. So I will, if they refuse to take their shoes off, probably I will say, okay, now probably you cannot come in. Let's go out somewhere else, right? So that's another option. You cannot come in with the shoes on. So, there's some things you cannot modify because of, someone believes something else. So, personally, if you cannot bow at all, even to, this is not your culture, this is not your religion, all right, but this is a Kendo. Okay, in this small Kendo community, we bow to each other because it's Japanese culture, and that's Japanese martial arts. So we follow that. If you don't want to do it, probably you don't have to do this. I agree with most of people who said, who left comments, and I really appreciate. And, again, we're not worshiping anything or anyone. We just simply bow into each other to show respect, right? Of course, sometimes you don't want to bow to someone. Someone says that on Facebook. I don't respect that person. I don't want to. I hate him or her, right? So do we have to bow? I understand the feeling, but and then, we're not there to hate people. I know some people, you just don't get along, right? But again, within this Kendo situation, we really do need to bow, because that otherwise just a fight. This is going to be a fight. Oh, I don't like you, and then there's no such a thing. I don't like you, and I don't want to fight you. If you, as a result of not fighting, Kendo, let's say you do Jigeko and end up hitting each other, you shouldn't fight that guy, right? But at the same time, that is not a good mindset, So again, Kendo doesn't teach you to be aggressive so you can punch other people in training. You have to control that, situation, your emotions. That is a part of the training. So, it, it is true we have people we don't want to hang out with, but it doesn't mean you just show disrespect to them. You don't have to talk to them. If you have to fight them in Jigeko, just be cool. You sometimes have to learn how to do it, right? That is living in the society. I understand, but just society, big society, we need to do it. And Kendo is a very small society, all right. And then Pro Jigeko doesn't last that long, so you just be cool and learn how to be cool. So that's another skill set you can learn through Kendo if you have to deal with a person you don't like. So I think it's a really that's the great reason to learn Kendo. Control yourself. So, but anyway, so I don't know what you think, and I'm really curious because we will have these topic. I mean, you will encounter someone say, "I don't want to follow this. I don't want to follow that." It's simply you can say, "Okay, then you can do Kendo," or is it okay if you do that? Something you can think about. I know, there's no question about it. If you can't follow this, don't do it. I understand that attitude as well, but it will happen, right? And then I don't know how Kendo will take. I mean, I don't think there's a rule in the rule book. I don't think it says you should bow. I have to check. I don't have that here right now, but tell me what you think, and let's. We don't need to have this conclusion right now, but something that you can kind of keep thinking, keep considering what you're going to do if you encounter such person or such situation. Okay, and I think you can see me. I have lights there. I bought 2 lights thanks to the members at patreon.com/Kendo4Life. They, because of their constant support, I could improve this shooting situation, shooting equipment. So I really appreciate that. And if you can help me financially monthly, please do so. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast. I would like to send special thanks to Patrons for their constant support through patreons.com/Kendo4Life.